This is about value proposition. What is your value proposition? You probably have seen recently a fair number of articles and so on talking about that. And it really means, what do you add in terms of value if someone hires you? So it's a relatively obvious concept, and yet many of us don't spend the time, the energy, the whatever, to really figure out what value can I add. In times like this, when the economy is challenging, to say the least, the concept of what you can add in terms of value is especially critical. And the reason for that is that if you can make a clear case to an employer about, hire me and I can do this for you, and I can do this for you quickly and effectively, the employer is going to be far more interested in hiring you because they're going to see the value you bring to them immediately. The way you think about your value and your value proposition is really a matter of looking backwards first to see what kinds of things you have done over time, how they in fact influenced the organizations that you worked for. All of us bring value and add value to a company when we're successful. So it's easiest to start with the things that you think of as your successes. What's important is to think about what those themes are and how they will influence this job search. And it will influence the job search not only in terms of how you present yourself, but also in terms of who you present yourself to. So when you start to think about this, let me use myself as an example. All throughout my career heading human resource functions, I saw myself and represented myself as a business person who could help the organization to achieve their mission-critical goals through more effective human resource practices. What that means in reality is not only how I presented myself to the hiring folks, but also what jobs I looked for. So if I see a job ad and the job ad said that they wanted somebody and all of the job ad terms in it were very bureaucratic, very administrative, and they wanted to be sure you did payroll and you did benefits and you managed the new hire orientation process and you kept the books current and so forth, I wouldn't apply for a job like that, because that's said to me, this is a company that sees human resources as an administrative function. That's not my strength. But if I saw an ad that talked about human resources in terms of helping a company grow, or in terms of creating new systems and procedures, then I looked at that because I thought, that's my strength, that's what I do. So when you think about your value proposition, what I want you to think about is both pieces of that after you've defined some of it. And clearly, the first piece is to really go back and think about what you've done and see what kind of patterns that you can think about. And so, because it's a lot easier to make you do this right now than to hope you'll do it when you get home tonight, what I'd like to start with is a small exercise in which that's actually what you do. Now I'm going to hand out a little sheets of paper, but what I'd like you to be thinking about is, your past successes. How did you do things? What did you do that really worked? And take these in terms of how you have added value in the past. I hope that that gave you at least a little sort of a flavor of how you would think about this. And the important thing is really, if you will spend some time to think about this concept and then embed it in your cover letter, your resumes, in your interview preparation, you will have a much better chance in this market and in any other, but especially in a tough market. And part of the process of thinking about the value that you bring, the value that you add, is to think also about the other side of the piece, the employer side of the piece. And it is critical that you research the employers that might need the value that you bring. Clearly, you have some preferences yourself in terms of employers. The worst thing you can do in a job search is just blast your resume out everywhere because you don't really get any good positive feedback that way. You're not likely to find a job, but you are likely to look like used goods fairly quickly if too many people have seen your resume and it's not the perfect resume that you needed it to be for that particular employer. So when you're thinking about the value and how you can add it, you need to think about the organizations that really you matter to, where what you do is a key important thing for them. You need to think about the type of organizations you succeed in. I am much better working with small to mid-sized businesses than working with big corporations. That's me. That may not be you. You need to think about those things for yourself. Where can you and your work add value? And you need to think about it in terms then of an organization that needs your skills, needs your services, you can fit into and be successful in, and research the organizations you identify. We've talked certainly about how you do that kind of research. It's so much easier, there's so much online, but don't neglect your network. Don't neglect asking real human beings who have worked there what it's like to work there, so that you can tailor that message of the value that you're bringing to them to their kind of terminology, their kind of needs most effectively. Does this sound like a fair amount of work? Yes, it is. What do you think your investment is when you take a new job? Your investment is far more money than you will spend on anything other than probably a house in your lifetime. Because when you take a new job, you are not only looking at your immediate salary, but you're looking at the lost opportunity of if you've not taken the right job, and you're going to have to be looking again in a short amount of time, or if you take a job and you only do mediocrely at it, and so you don't get those big pay raises that a valuable contributor gets. So when you think about this, it's worth spending a little more time up front to define the value that you bring to the organization and to find the organizations that are best for you, and then focus more on those. Will there be targets of opportunity? Will somebody call you up that you've met and say, gee, I know something you might be interested in? Sure, but you really need to focus.